So today officially marks a year since my dad has passed away. And if you guys saw my update video a year ago, I had trouble recording a video talking about what had happened. But I honestly thought it was pretty important to remember because I wanted to know how I felt at that time. And I wanted to be able to look back at that time and remember how I felt. And that's kind of always what I've done with my YouTube channel. I've documented things that have happened in my life, and I felt like I had to talk about that because otherwise it's just leaving out a big thing that has happened in my life. And so now that a year has gone by, I wanted to talk about the things that I've thought about a year since my dad's passed away and kind of the things I've learned, because I think a video like this will hopefully help someone else who's going through loss or something hard. The same way when I recorded that video initially a year ago, I thought the same thing. I thought, even though this is really hard and I don't necessarily want to talk about something like this, I think it could also prove to be beneficial for someone else. And if it is helpful for someone else, I think I should make a video on it. So it's been, it's been a hard year in many ways. And for better or for worse, I think I've learned a lot from it. And I've really done my best to try and take lessons from it and, move forward each day the best that I can. But it's been really hard at times too. And I have a lot of questions and, thoughts about if things could have been different. And, I replay things in my head a lot. Um, but there are definitely a handful of really important things that I think I've learned. I've tried to sort of distill them down into like a small list to talk about. And the first thing that I've really thought about a lot since my dad's passed away is just how much your health matters and anyone's health matters, because if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything. And I mean that in terms of your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health. Everything really stems from your health. And your health in all those different aspects, I think, combine to really be the foundation of how you feel. And you can have everything else in the world, really, but if you don't have your health, you really have nothing, I think. So there's some quote that talks about how, if someone's healthy, they'll have 1,000 things that they want. And if someone's sick, there's really only one thing that that person wants, and that's to be healthy. So I've focused a lot on health this year. I think I've always been pretty good about my health. I care about my health a lot, but I think since my dad has passed away, it's just put that front and center. Because if I don't have my health, I really have nothing else. It doesn't matter the means that I have. It doesn't matter the things that I could potentially be able to do in terms of like monetary value or otherwise, or the opportunities that are in front of me, because I'm limited ultimately by my health. So I've really thought about that a lot. I've done my best to be in the gym and to eat healthy, while obviously still living my life, because I think you have to enjoy your time here as well. Um, but it's amazing how much going to the gym helps me physically, but also mentally, really. I used to work out because I wanted to play soccer. Honestly, that was really why I first started actually getting into the gym and trying to develop and build a lot of muscle, because I wanted to be stronger on the field. But eventually it just became a mental thing. I, saw a lot of changes in my physical health and my body, especially, and I put on a lot of weight originally, definitely in terms of muscle. But then it just became a release. It became like an hour of every single day when I didn't think about all the crazy things that would just be running around in my head and all the things that were stressing me out and making me upset. I would go to the gym, and I literally, it was like I could pause my mind. I would go to the gym and I would just feel so much better 45 minutes, an hour later when I left the gym. And it's just such a cheat code, honestly. Like, if you can get yourself to walk into a gym, you don't even have to do anything. And honestly, that's what I'd recommend for people who are having trouble starting to go to the gym. Just walk in. I don't care if you scroll on your phone for 45 minutes and leave. Just walk into the gym, and eventually you'll start doing things. You'll start doing exercises, you'll meditate, you'll do yoga, you'll lift weights, you'll box, you'll do whatever you want to do there. And I guarantee you'll feel better because of it. So I've thought a lot about my health, and I'm going to continue to focus on my health and trying to do all the things that I can to really make sure my health is front and center and in a good place. The next thing I thought a lot about is just how important it is to be happy. And it sounds so cliche and it sounds so simple to just tell someone to be happy. But I actually think it's a lot of work, especially when, things that are out of your control or things that are hard to deal with happen. And that's part of life, unfortunately. And so with my dad passing away, I've really thought about how I can be as happy as possible and what it is in life that does make me happy and that does bring me joy and that I do ultimately want to spend whatever it is, whatever the amount of time is that I have here doing. And I think in some ways I have a pretty good idea of what makes me happy and what doesn't. And I can kind of compartmentalize and sort things. Like if you tell me an activity, I can tell you if that makes me happy or sad or feel good or bad. But I think it is kind of a journey in itself, figuring out what makes you happy. And so I've thought a lot about those things, and I've tried to think about what are the things that make me happiest. And then on top of that, how can I maximize doing those things? How can I spend as much time as possible doing the things that make me as happy as possible? Because we don't know how long we have. And I want to be as happy as often as possible. And I think you should too. So I think you first have to figure out what it is that makes you happy. And I think trying things is really the first step to actually doing that. Because I think, activity A, let's say coding, might make me as happy as possible. But if I'm not willing to go out and try other things and gather other data points, I can't actually know what will make me the happiest. Or even comparing A to B, if I only have one data point, I can't possibly know if another activity would be above or below my level of happiness that's brought to me by A. So I'm trying to be better about trying different things, about branching out and making decisions that ultimately aren't catastrophic. I think I'm pretty rigid as a person. I can have very black and white thinking sometimes, and I'm trying to adjust that. But I really think it's important to try things. And especially if you can take a calculated risk and experiment and see what makes you happy, you really should do that. And I think I need to do more of that as well. And there's some risks that make sense to not take. But there are things that I can try and that are within my threshold or appetite for risk that I can do. And honestly, if those things pay off and they do make me happier than maybe the thing that makes me happy now, or one of the things that makes me happy now, that really is like a percentage gain that I can have for the foreseeable future, right? However long I have. And so a very simple example of this that I think about a lot is like a job. I think that in my brain, in how I feel about me as a person in my life and where I am now, I really feel like if I worked for myself, I would be happier than if I worked any kind of job that was 9 to 5, working for someone else, working for a company. But a lot of times I'm very hesitant to try working for myself full time as opposed to on the side or after hours, because I think it seems risky, right? The safe thing to do is to stay at a 9 to 5, contribute to your 401k, collect your paychecks, do good work, get promoted, man, like the whole 9 yards, right? Climb the ladder. That's what's safe. That's what's predictable. But I think what will make me happier is doing something on my own. But I feel afraid to take a leap like that sometimes. And so that's something that I have had front and center in my mind. And I've thought about a lot over this past year, because I actually think that's a two-way door, meaning that I can make a decision like quitting my job or quitting a job and going and finding another job if it doesn't make sense for me to work for myself, or I don't have as much fun as I thought I would, or it's really just not all I thought it'd be chalked up to be. So I think that's a very simple example of how I could be more flexible, right? I think luckily having a software engineering job or software engineering skills is pretty lucrative. It's pretty safe. It's kind of a safety net, really. So if I went and tried something for X amount of time, I think it is pretty easy to go back through that door, right? A two-way door, and reverse that decision. And yeah, I will have foregone some amount of money maybe, or experience or learning that I could have gotten from that job. But at the same time, I think I would have learned a lot from going out and trying that on my own. And even knowing that maybe I tried it and it wasn't for me. I think there's a lot of value on that. And I think some people would pay a lot of money, myself included probably, to actually know definitively if doing something like that is actually going to make me happier. And then I can continue doing that for, maybe the rest of my life, as opposed to, oh, it doesn't make me happy. And I think there's a lot of value in actually knowing something like that. So I've thought a lot about how to be as happy as possible. And obviously, it's not just something I'm going to solve. I have to continuously work at it. And I think that's something that you should think about too. How happy are you now? if you aren't happy or you think you could be happier, what are the things that you can do to make yourself happier, to enjoy as much of the time that you have as possible? The next thing that I think I have really done my best with my dad passing is that I always want to use hard things in life to motivate me. And the truth is, unfortunately, that hard things are going to happen in life. And I think you always have a choice how you react to things that happen to you or things that occur in your life. And so for me, I have tried to the best of my ability as many days as possible over this past year to see what has happened and use that as fuel, because things like this are going to happen, unfortunately, and you might as well choose to use them as fuel because they can help you. So I have really used my dad's passing as honestly like a way to motivate me to do random things. It could be getting out of the bed in the morning. And I really just think to myself, my dad would do anything in the world to be able to get out of bed and to be here and to have that option. And so today I want to make that decision, and I want to feel fortunate that I have the ability and the option to get out of bed today, and I want to do that. Or like I might be in the gym and I might really not want to do an exercise or lift a certain amount of weight or do anything, right? I might not want to clean my house, whatever it is. And I just think to myself, good or bad, how badly my dad would give anything, or my dad would give everything really, to feel anything at all. And so I remember I used to do some cold plunges. Like when I was on vacation, there was a cold pool in Portugal where I was at this hotel, and the water was, I think it was 37 degrees or something. And it was very hard to get myself to go neck deep or underwater in that ice bath. Like it felt very uncomfortable and it didn't feel good and it shocked my system. But every single time I was about to walk into that cold plunge, I just thought to myself that literally my dad would give everything in the world to be able to feel the feelings that I'm about to feel, even if they're uncomfortable, even if they're hard, even if they actually maybe don't feel good. So I've used that, or tried to use that, every single day as a motivator to do all the things, good and bad, that I am so lucky to be here and to have the options that I do. And I know my dad would give anything to be able to do any of those things even one more time. So use hard things in life as a motivator, because you ultimately have a choice. You can't control what happens to you, but you can always control how you react. The next thing I've thought a lot about is just urgency. You should have urgency with things that you do, and not to stress you out, but you really should try to not leave things that could be done today until tomorrow, because you don't know when your last day is going to be. And so for me, when I think about the fact that my dad passed away at 60, I think about that, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to be 30 soon enough. And that's, half of my dad's life. And I think if you would have told him at 30 he was going to live to 60, that would sound insane. So you need to have urgency with things that you do. And you need to, again, really be focused on what it is you want to do with the time that you have, and spend the time figuring it out and change course when you need to, because you just don't know, honestly. So I've really tried to do my best to have urgency with things. I think I've, been good in some areas and bad in others, and I'll do what I can to improve there. But I really think that's important. Once you figure out what it is that makes you happy and what it is that you want to do, you really should, really put the pedal to the metal and try and do them. And the last thing that I really think about constantly, and I try and use it as a daily reminder to myself, is that you can really count the things that truly matter in life on one hand. And I really think everything outside of those things are just noise. And I think I've kind of named at least one of them on the list. Like, I think your health is the most important thing, really, maybe above everything and anything. And I think maybe there's a couple things that could compete with that. But I think if you don't have your health, again, you have nothing. You have nothing else. You can't pass go, right? You can only go so far, which is basically nowhere. And I think really that's the first thing. I think the second thing, like I said, and maybe this is not in the right order and you can make your own order, but these are just things that I've thought about. I think the second thing would probably just be being as happy as often as you can, because you have to be happy, right? Like this ride called life goes by faster than we realize, and you have to enjoy the time you have. And the third thing I think about is just being around people who you love and who love you, and spending time with them. And so to me, that's your family and that's your friends, your chosen family. And you should really try to be around those people as much as possible. Those are the people who are in your corner. Those are the people who I think really make life worth living. and they just make everything that much sweeter. So I just think honestly, like those are the things that matter. And I don't know if anything else matters. I don't know if your job really matters. I don't know if where you live matters that much, at least in comparison to those different things. So I try and use this as a constant reminder. Like if I'm stressed about something I have to do at work, or if I'm stuck in traffic, or if I'm late to an appointment, or if a random person yells at me, it just doesn't matter, you know? And I think when you zoom out and put things in perspective, it's like really like those 3 to 5 things are what matter and nothing else does. Everything else is just noise. So I don't know. Those are just things that I've reflected on over the last year since my dad has passed away. I really hope this has helped someone else going through a tough time, or maybe they're at the beginning of a process and they have lost a loved one or something. But to me, I think it's important to make this because I think it's good for me to think about and reflect and to give an update again on my life, because I think that's largely what my YouTube channel is about. It's about things happening. It's about what I'm feeling. And obviously these are things that are weighing heavy on my mind right now. And I also think it's really helpful, or at least I hope it can be, because to me, you know, day one, week one, month one, when all this stuff was happening, I didn't know what things looked like. And I didn't know how I was going to feel in another week, another day, another year from that day. And I think the best that I've heard it described as is it's kind of a wound, and eventually your wound will become a scar. And I think everyone's timeline is different, I'm sure. But I feel like it has largely become a scar at this point. And I still think about my dad every single day. I think about him multiple times every day. And, you know, I think I listen to phone calls that I saved and I recorded from him, and I think about him all the time, and so many different parts of life that just remind me of him. And at this point, I really just feel thankful. I feel thankful that I had my dad for 27 years in my life. I feel thankful for all the things that he afforded me, opportunities, you know, just access to people, a good life. I feel so thankful and so indebted to him. And I wish I could pay him back. And I think the best that I can really do is to do as much as I can to be as helpful as possible to people, to be a good person. And I don't know, just work hard. I think that's what he'd really care about, is that I work hard and I do my best. So that's really what I'm trying to do with this video and otherwise in life. So I hope I'm making you proud, Dad. And I love you and I miss you very much.